Your mind is creating your karma right now. In this moment, with the quality of attention you are bringing to these words. This is what the Dhammapada, one of the most widely read Buddhist texts in the world, has always taught. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. Every deed is led by mind, created by mind. If one acts with a serene mind, happiness follows as a shadow that never departs. Karma is not a record of what you have done wrong. It is the living texture of what your mind is doing right now, the quality of intention moving beneath every act, every word, every moment of care or carelessness. 9 Buddhist stories will show you exactly how this works. And by the time you have heard them all, the mind that is listening will have changed. Where are you tonight? Whatever surface is holding you right now, let it hold you fully. These stories will do their work without effort from you. A dying man who discovers the only thing that follows him. A woman with 1 coin and 1 lamp, whose offering could not be extinguished. A child with both hands full of dirt, kneeling. A young monk in a flooded stream, holding a branch steady while ants cross to safety. Each one a record of an actual life in which the quality of mind behind a single act changed everything that followed. Each one is medicine for something you have been carrying. The first story comes from some of the oldest recorded teachings in the Buddhist tradition, preserved in the Chinese Agama Sutras, oral teachings compiled over 2,000 years ago from the direct lineage of early Buddhism. It is the story of a man who spent an entire life investing in the wrong things, and who discovered this only when time had run out to do anything different. He has no name in the text. He is simply a man of considerable means, which is to say, a man who had arranged his life around the things that means can purchase, and who had been, by every visible measure, successful at the arrangement. His household was well ordered, his reputation solid, his daily comforts reliable in the way only long familiarity with wealth makes them. He had spent decades accumulating what a careful life accumulates: property, standing, relationships, both useful and genuine, pleasures, both refined and ordinary. In the eyes of his world, and for most of his years in his own, he had done well. He had 4 wives. In the world this story comes from, this required no explanation. What the teaching depends on entirely is the quality of attention he gave to each one, because the 4 wives, as you will see, are not about marriage at all. His 4th wife, he adored. She was beautiful and graceful, and he poured into her, keeping every resource his position allowed. The finest clothing, the choicest food, constant and elaborate attention. Whatever she wanted arrived before she had quite finished wanting it. He thought about her when other matters demanded him, thought about her with the particular vigilance that accompanies the fear of loss, though he would not have named it fear. He had organized his inner life around her, the way a person organizes themselves around something they are terrified to be without, quietly mistaking the terror for love, the anxiety for devotion. She had become, over years, and without his quite deciding it, the fixed point around which everything else revolved. He believed this was because she mattered most. It would be more accurate to say she frightened him most, that the thought of losing her was the thought he most worked to avoid, and that avoidance had shaped an entire life. His third wife he was proud of, the quiet, settled pride of a man who believes his choices have made him someone worth being. She was accomplished and admired, and her presence in his life felt like evidence that his judgment had been sound, his standing deserved, his life assembled correctly. He showed her to company with a restraint that was itself a form of display. Their relationship had the warmth of mutual confirmation. She reflected him well, and he valued her for it in the particular way. A person values something that keeps telling them they are right. His second wife had been beside him a long time. She was practical, capable, unfailingly steady when difficulty arrived, the kind of presence a person reaches for automatically in a crisis, without pausing to feel grateful for the reaching. She managed what needed managing, absorbed what needed absorbing, and asked of him mainly that he lean on her when he needed to, and treat that leaning as ordinary. He did lean on her. He did treat it as ordinary, having long since stopped experiencing her steadiness as something that could be otherwise. And his first wife, the one who had been with him longest, present before any of the others arrived, he had, across the years, and without any single decisive act of unkindness, almost entirely neglected. She never demanded anything that could not be deferred. She never manufactured urgency or made herself impossible to overlook. She was simply there, faithful and available, and because she never left, he had stopped believing her presence required anything from him. He gave her what remained after the other three had been tended, which was, most days, close to nothing. There were mornings he meant to attend to her, and did not. There were evenings he recognized her patience, and told himself he would do better tomorrow. He would have said, if asked, that he cared for her. He would have meant it. But caring, in his case, had long since become a word he used in place of an act he performed. Then he became ill. Not suddenly. Serious illness rarely arrives suddenly. It announces itself in stages, each one slightly more final than the last, until the morning when all the stages resolve into a single, undeniable clarity. He lay in his bed and felt the solid architecture of his life beginning to shift under him. The property, the reputation, the carefully maintained comforts. He could feel, with a precision he had never permitted himself before, how little any of it had to do with him. It had always been arranged around him, like furniture in a room. But furniture is not the room, and lying still while the illness did what it would do He was discovering that the room had always been emptier than he had believed. What frightened him most was not death itself. It was the prospect of facing it alone, of arriving at something enormous with no one beside him. He called for his fourth wife, the one he had given everything, organized everything around, spent a lifetime afraid of losing. He told her what the illness meant, and with the directness that terminal illness licenses, he asked her to go with him, to accompany him into whatever followed. She looked at him with genuine sorrow. The sorrow was real, and he could see it was real, and he received no comfort from seeing it. She could not follow him where he was going. She had her own life to return to. She was sorry. He waited for the weight of this to settle, and then called for his third wife. Surely the life they had built together, the life that had seemed so confirmed, so meaningful, so correctly assembled, had some gravity that extended past the edge of his own. She was kind, and she was honest. She would walk beside him to the funeral ground and make certain he was properly attended. But beyond that, into whatever waited after, she could not go. He called for his second wife. She came with tears already forming. She took his hand and held it, and the holding was genuine. She would do everything that could be done, every comfort, every practical kindness that remained available. But when it was finished, she would have to return. Her life was here. She could not go with him either. 3 refusals. 3 people who had been, by every measure, he used to build his existence, the most essential presences in it. And not one of them could follow him. The silence after the third refusal is where the story pivots. In that silence, his first wife came to mind. Not with warmth. He did not know her well enough for warmth. He remembered her the way a person remembers a debt they have spent years not examining, with slow and uncomfortable recognition, and something that might have been shame. He called for her with almost no expectation. She came quietly. She sat beside him, and when he asked, with the particular hesitation of a person who knows they are asking for something they have not earned, she did not pause. I will go with you wherever you go. You have given me very little, but I have always been with you. That will not change now. The text does not describe what moved through him in that moment. It does not need to. There are things the silence holds better than words do. The teaching arrives plainly in the manner of these early Buddhist texts. The fourth wife, the one adored, the one given everything, is the body. We tend it, worry about it, organize enormous portions of a life around its comfort and appearance and health. When we die, it remains behind. This is not a failure of the body. It is simply its nature. The third wife is wealth, status, and achievement. Every visible sign by which we judge a life well built. It accompanies us to the very edge of this life. no further. The second wife is everyone who loves us, family, friends, the whole community of relationship whose grief at our leaving will be entirely real. They will carry us as far as love can carry anyone. Their love has a boundary, and that boundary is the perimeter of their own living. The first wife is the quality of intention behind every act of the mind. Every moment of genuine patience chosen when impatience was easier. Every time honesty was chosen when convenience was available instead. Every small act of care given without audience, without calculation, without any expectation of being noticed or thanked. Every instant of real attention brought to what was actually present, a conversation, a difficult task, a moment of someone else's pain, rather than to wherever the restless mind would have preferred to go. This is what the Buddhist tradition means by karma. The Dhammapada states it as its very first teaching. Mind is the forerunner of all things. Karma is not punishment, not a ledger of wrongs compiled against us. It is intentional action, the quality of will moving beneath everything we do and say and choose, accumulating in the texture of the mind that generated it, slowly shaping what that mind becomes. The first wife follows because she has never been separate from the one she follows. She is the quality of the mind itself. She cannot be left behind any more than a river can be separated from its flowing. And here is the healing this story carries. He neglected her for years, decades, perhaps, in which the fourth wife received everything and the first received almost nothing. And yet when he finally called her, she came without reproach. No list of grievances, no requirement that he account for the years of neglect before she agreed to stay. Because genuine intention, once given, does not abandon. It does not dissolve when it goes unwitnessed. Every authentic moment of care he had ever extended, every small choice made on the side of patience, honesty, or generosity, in any year of his life, those were still there. They had been accumulating beneath the surface of his attention, quietly and continuously, the way roots grow in the dark beneath soil that looks bare from above. Nothing wholesome is lost. This is not a comfort invented to soften the teaching. It is what the tradition holds, clearly and without qualification. Intentional acts of genuine care do not disappear when no one witnesses them. They become part of what the mind is. They travel with it, and over time, they become what the mind offers, naturally, without effort, the way a tree that has been growing toward light for years eventually becomes the thing that provides shade. This is where the healing lands for anyone who has spent years wondering whether the small and unwitnessed kindnesses of their life have meant anything. Whether the patience extended on a difficult day, the care offered when no one was watching, the choice made quietly for honesty when dishonesty was available, whether any of it has accumulated into something real. The first wife's answer is this: yes, all of it, every single moment. You have been building a relationship with your first wife throughout your life. Perhaps not as consciously or as generously as you might have wished. Perhaps there have been long stretches where the other three received everything and she received the residue. She has not kept a ledger of the deficit. She has simply been accumulating what was given. Each act of real attention, each moment of choosing care when carelessness was easier, each choice for kindness when self-protection was the simpler path, quietly becoming more of what you are. The story ends with her answer, not with his regret, not with a lesson delivered from outside, but with the simple fact of her unchanged presence after all the years of neglect. She will go with him. She has always been with him. That will not change. Whatever you have given to the quality of your own mind, whatever genuine care you have offered, however quietly, however imperfectly, however many times you forgot before you remembered again, it is already yours. It has always been yours. Nothing takes it from you. Stay with that for a moment before we move. The next story was told to a man who could barely walk, a man of similar wealth to the one we have just left, whose body had been carrying, for a long time, the accumulated weight of habits he had never examined. The Buddha sat with him, identified 5 specific causes, and offered a prescription so unglamorous and so precise that it is easy to underestimate how completely it changed things. What happened to that man afterward holds something particular for anyone who has spent years in patterns they recognize are not serving them, and who wonders, with a specific and quiet urgency, whether anything can still be genuinely different. The body keeps records, not in any way it announces, not through deliberate filing or clear documentation, but through the slow and patient accumulation of consequences. Every repeated choice leaves a physical trace. Every sustained habit of mind eventually becomes legible in the body that has been carrying it, quietly registering everything across months and years, until the record grows impossible to overlook. The body is the autobiography of what the mind has been doing. It writes honestly, without flattery, and it continues writing until the day when someone finally reads what it has been saying all along. This is the frame in which the next story lives. It comes from the Anguttara Nikaya, one of the 5 major collections of the Pali Canon, in which thousands of the Buddha's discourses are organized by number, each sutta grouped according to how many items its central teaching contains. One of the oldest compiled records of Buddhist teaching we possess, and it records this particular encounter with the plainness of someone transcribing what actually happened rather than constructing what should have. The man was wealthy. He had been wealthy long enough that comfort had ceased to feel like a choice and had become simply the unremarkable texture of each day. Abundant food, reliable ease, no pressing requirement to exert himself beyond what the day called for. And the day, for a long time, had called for almost nothing. He had arranged his life with the quiet thoroughness of someone who has mistaken the removal of difficulty for the achievement of well-being. 2 entirely different things that can be genuinely hard to distinguish from inside. Either 1, which is to say, he had organized his days around avoidance, not consciously, not with any awareness that avoidance was what he was doing. The comfort was simply always the more available option, the easier direction, the choice that asked the least of him. And choices made consistently, across years, become the architecture of a life. What this arrangement had produced was a body in increasing difficulty. Not through any single dramatic deterioration, but in the gradual and almost imperceptible manner of a tide that has been advancing so long that no one noticed until the water was already at the door. Akis that had stopped being occasional and become background. Fatigue that arrived earlier than it once had and lingered longer than it should. Movement that required more of him than movement once required. He had reached the point at which the body's long and faithful record could no longer be dismissed, minimized, or deferred for another season. He had considered other options before coming, as people in difficulty tend to do, other consultants, other remedies, the possibility that what his body was telling him could be managed without being honestly examined. None of it had changed anything, and so he came to the Buddha with his hands folded and his movements slow. The Buddha received him without commentary on his physical condition. No visible assessment, no adjustment of manner, just the quality of attention the texts consistently associate with the Buddha's presence, complete, unhurried, as though this man and this moment were the only thing in the world that existed. The man described his condition. He spoke without minimizing or dramatizing, in the plain manner of someone who has decided to stop managing what an honest account might reveal. The weight, the restricted movement, the discomfort that had become constant, the growing distance between the body he had and the life he remembered being capable of living. The Buddha listened until the man was finished. Then he asked a question that no one had apparently thought to put to this man before. Would you like to know the causes? Not the symptoms, not the diagnosis in any medical sense. The causes, the patterns behind the symptoms, the habits of mind and action that had been quietly generating this condition long before it became visible in the body. The man said yes. 5 causes followed, named with the steady precision of someone who has observed the same patterns in human lives across many decades and has long since stopped being surprised by how reliably they reproduce themselves. The first cause was eating without moderation. The text does not describe this as eating the wrong foods. It describes eating past the body's genuine requirements, past real hunger, past actual nourishment, into the territory where food has become a mechanism for managing an interior condition that food was never designed to address. The mind that reaches for food in this way is substituting one thing for another, using appetite as a vehicle for something that has no appetite, a discomfort, a restlessness, a quiet unfulfillment sitting below the level of conscious attention. And with each repetition, the substitution deepens. The body registers what it is receiving, and the pattern becomes harder to see for what it is, because familiarity makes invisible what was once obvious. The second cause was sleeping beyond genuine rest, the sleep of a mind that has found in unconsciousness a reliable method of withdrawing from the full weight of a day it finds too demanding, too tedious, or too uncertain to stay present with. There is a quality of sleep that returns a person to themselves, and a quality of sleep that removes them from a life they are not yet ready to inhabit fully. The body can tell the difference, even when the mind has been refusing to for years. This is a pattern deeply familiar to anyone who has spent a period of their life tired in a way that sleep did not address, not the exhaustion of genuine effort, but the specific depletion of a person who has been half present in their own life for a long time. The third cause was organizing the day around pleasure as its central purpose. The Buddha was not teaching that pleasure is wrong. He was observing something more precise, a mind that reaches for pleasure reflexively, as its first automatic response to any friction or discomfort, gradually loses its capacity to stay present with difficulty. And that capacity to remain with what is difficult long enough to understand it is precisely the capacity through which genuine learning occurs, through which relationships deepen, through which a person learns anything of lasting value from their own experience. Erode it steadily, through years of reaching for comfort before the discomfort has been honestly met, and what remains is a mind that has been trained, one avoidance at a time, away from its own ability to change. The fourth cause was acting without reflection, moving through days and years on the momentum of established patterns, without pausing to ask whether those patterns are producing what the life actually requires. This is not necessarily an unhappy way to live. It can sustain considerable comfort for a long time. But a life running on instructions that no one has updated accumulates, slowly and invisibly, the consequence of that omission. The gap between what the habits produce and what the life genuinely needs keeps widening, and the body, which has been recording everything faithfully, eventually speaks loudly enough to require a response. The fifth cause was the absence of any regular activity in genuine service of others. Not the absence of busyness. The man was occupied with his own affairs. The specific absence the Buddha identified was this: no sustained act whose primary purpose was the benefit of anyone other than himself. A life arranged entirely around its own maintenance, and comfort develops, over time, a particular interior quality, a slow contraction, a narrowing of the world the mind can inhabit, as it grows increasingly occupied with its own contents and less responsive to what lives outside them. 5 causes, 5 patterns of mind expressed in the body's condition. The distinction the Buddha drew by naming causes rather than issuing a verdict is one of the most quietly significant things in this story. He did not say, "You have lived poorly, and this is what poor living produces." He named patterns, patterns that are specific, patterns that can be addressed. The difference between being told you have a flawed character and being shown 5 workable causes is the entire distance between helplessness and genuine possibility. The Buddhist tradition returns to this distinction again and again. Suffering arises from causes and conditions, which means it can be changed. That is the most compassionate thing it is possible to say to a person in difficulty. Not that they are broken, that something is causing this, and causes can be worked with. The man received this without argument, perhaps because the precision of what he heard left no foothold for defense. Perhaps because being seen clearly, without judgment, produces a particular interior effect, a relaxation of the habitual effort to protect the story one has been telling about oneself. He sat with the 5 causes the way a person sits with something they have, in some quiet part of themselves, always known. The prescription asked nothing heroic. Eat to genuine satisfaction and stop there. Find some regular form of contribution to others, not grand, not witnessed, simply present and consistent. Pause before acting, often enough that the pausing becomes reflex. Walk. Small redirections, each one modest enough to actually sustain, together sufficient to begin shifting what the body had been asked to carry. He left. Time passed. There is always something important in the passage of time in these stories, not as dramatic device, but as honest acknowledgement that genuine change requires the space of real days. It cannot be compressed or rushed. It requires being lived. And then the man returned. He moved with an ease that had not been visible in him before. Not radically altered, recognizably himself, the same face and the same history, but with something released in the body that had been held there under accumulated habit for years. He could walk without the conscious effort that walking had required. The chronic discomfort had quieted. His face held the quality of a person who has stopped being in active conflict with the body they live in, who has recovered enough interior space to notice something beyond their own pain. He had the expression of someone who had stopped bracing, which is entirely different from the expression of someone who has never needed to brace at all. He was not performing recovery. The lightness was genuine, and genuine lightness cannot be manufactured. It arrives only when something that has been holding has finally been released. He told the Buddha the body was better. And then he said the sentence that lifts this story beyond what any story about physical health could hold. He said, "Now I want to understand what the mind is doing." The healing of the body had cleared enough space that a question had formed, one that could not have existed during the first visit, because the pain had been filling all the room where that question might otherwise have lived. The 5 causes had been addressed, and the addressing had worked, and the working had opened a door the man had not known was there. On the other side of that door was the inquiry at the center of this entire video. The Buddha's response is spare in the text, and its sparseness is deliberate. The worldly person nourishes the body. The wise person nourishes the mind. This is not a dismissal of what the body requires. What had just been done for the body had been entirely necessary, and worth every effort. The teaching is about sequence and about source. The body is where the mind's habits eventually become visible, where years of intention and action arrive, finally, in physical form. Tend the body wisely, and it becomes capable of supporting deeper practice. But the body's condition is always, at its root, a downstream expression of what the mind has been creating upstream, which is not a weight to carry. It is the most liberating thing the tradition has to say. If the mind is the source, then tending the mind is the solution, and that authority is already yours. Your mind creates your karma, and this includes, specifically and practically, the karma of the body you are living in right now. The healing this story offers is available to anyone who recognizes themselves in it. If any of the 5 causes feel familiar, the eating that goes past real hunger, the sleep that has begun to function as withdrawal, the pleasure-seeking that happens automatically before the discomfort has been honestly felt, the days moving on unexamined momentum, the life that has grown quietly self-contained in a way that no longer quite satisfies, the story does not assign you to a verdict. It shows you what was shown to the man who could barely walk, that these are causes, which means they are workable, and workable is the only ground on which anything has ever genuinely changed. The man arrived barely able to move and left asking about the liberation of the mind. That progression required neither extraordinary discipline nor rare willpower. It is what becomes possible when specific causes are addressed with modest and sustainable changes, honestly sustained. The door opened. He walked through it. You are already through the door that brought you to this listening. You have been here for 2 stories, and something in you knew they were worth staying for. That knowing is the first wife, still here, still faithful, still entirely yours. You are already through the door that brought you to this listening. You have been here for 2 stories, and something in you knew they were worth staying for. That knowing is the first wife, still here, still faithful, still entirely yours. The 3rd story arrives from the Pali Canon, and it asks a question about perception, about what we are certain we understand, and what that certainty might be quietly costing us. Certainty has a particular texture. It settles into the body the way familiar furniture settles into a room, so reliably present that you stop noticing it is there and begin, without deciding to, treating it as part of the permanent structure rather than as something that arrived at a specific point and has simply been allowed to stay. Most of what we hold most firmly about our own lives, about why certain relationships have unfolded the way they have, about where our genuine limits are, about the shape of whatever difficulty has traveled with us longest, we hold with the interior quality of someone reporting what they have directly observed. The feeling of certainty and the feeling of accurate observation are, from inside either one, completely indistinguishable from each other. This matters because one of them sometimes extends itself considerably further than the evidence it rests on can actually support. The third story in this journey comes from the Udana, one of the shorter and more concentrated collections in the Pali Canon, and it does not argue that certainty is a flaw. It does something more useful and more precise than that. It shows, without judgment, what happens when genuine experience, careful, first-hand, honestly acquired, through direct contact with the world, is treated as though it were complete experience. And it delivers this teaching through an image so recognizable that it tends to arrive not as instruction, but as the quiet, slightly uncomfortable sensation of finding yourself unexpectedly inside a story you believed you were only being asked to watch. A king in a prosperous city had grown troubled by the arguments filling his streets. Not disputes about property or trade. Those had established channels for resolution. What unsettled him were arguments about deeper things, the nature of experience, the nature of reality, what is actually true beneath the surface of all the visible arrangements of daily life. His city was full of people holding strong and irreconcilable positions on these questions, each entirely convinced of the accuracy of their own view, each genuinely unable to understand how anyone who had honestly examined the matter could have arrived anywhere else. The conviction was sincere on all sides. The conflict was total. He decided to find out why, and he chose an unusual method. A group of men who had been blind from birth were brought to the grounds and led, one at a time, to a different part of an elephant. None had encountered this animal before. Each was given unhurried time to explore the portion he had been brought to, using his hands carefully and without being rushed. The men took their task seriously. They were not estimating or guessing. They were investigating with the deliberate care of people who understand that the reliability of what they report depends entirely on the quality of attention they bring to the examination. The man led to the head ran his hands across the broad, smooth curve of the skull and thought before he spoke. An elephant, he said, is like a large round pot, smooth, solid, substantial. He was right. The man led to the ear, held the wide, soft flap of it, and felt the particular way it moved. An elephant, he said, is like a winnowing basket. He was also right. The man who touched the tusk found something long, smooth, and slightly curved, harder than anything previously encountered in a living creature. The man who felt the trunk described something entirely different, long, hollow, extraordinarily capable of movement, unlike any fixed structure. The man who wrapped his arms around one of the great legs announced with complete confidence that an elephant was exactly like a post planted in the earth, cylindrical, dense, immovable at its base. The man given the tale held the thin cord of it between his fingers, listened to the descriptions coming from the others, shook his head slowly, and stated clearly that an elephant was unmistakably like a broom, and he could not explain what the others had been touching. Each man had been led to the same animal. Each had applied genuine care. Each had arrived at a conclusion perfectly consistent with everything his hands had actually found. Then the king brought them together. The argument was immediate and conducted with complete sincerity. Each man defended what he had felt, dismissed the other's accounts as the product of careless examination, and held his position with the settled energy of someone who knows precisely what he has touched. The exchange grew loud not because these men were unreasonable, but because sincere people, reasoning carefully from partial information, reliably arrive at incompatible conclusions and then argue about whose conclusion is the true one, rather than asking what might be absent from all of them at once. The Buddha, having observed this scene, named what he saw plainly. Teachers and seekers of many kinds, he said, each perceive one part of things and declare that part to be the whole of it, saying, "This alone is true, everything else is wrong." Each is accurate about what they have touched. Each has extended that accuracy beyond the ground it can honestly hold. Now the story turns towards something more personal than a king's courtyard. Think about the most settled belief you carry about whatever has caused you the most persistent difficulty. The explanation you have built for why it remains as it does, who shaped it, what it reveals, what it means for the possibilities still ahead. This explanation was formed through genuine experience. Real things happened. Real evidence accumulated. You were led to a part of the elephant, and you touched it with care, and what your hands found was genuinely there. And it is a portion of something larger than your hands have so far been able to reach. Here is where the karma teaching running through this video finds its footing inside this story. The mind creates karma through the quality of intention behind every act. The Dhammapada established this from its very first verse, and the four wives showed it across the texture of an entire life. But there is a question that sits upstream from intention. What is the mind actually working with when it forms its responses to the world? The answer, most of the time, is the accumulated set of certainties it has stopped examining, beliefs present long enough to have become invisible, experienced as walls rather than as furniture that could be moved. A mind operating from unexamined certainty attends selectively. It notices what fits the existing explanation and quietly filters what complicates it. It responds not to what is actually present in this specific moment, but to the well-worn expectation of what this kind of situation has always seemed to mean. The actions arising from that filtered perception generate consequences consistent with the original certainty, sealing a loop that can sustain itself across months and years, with almost no genuine contact with the reality it believes it is accurately tracking. This is one of the quieter ways the mind shapes its own experience without noticing it is doing so, and it is entirely reversible. The healing this story carries is the specific relief of a long-held certainty being gently loosened. Loosened, not overturned. Those two experiences feel entirely different from inside them. Overturning asks a person to abandon what they know, and abandoning what you know feels like losing the ground underfoot. Loosening simply introduces the possibility that the elephant extends beyond the portion your hands have reached. That is not a loss. It is the arrival of space. Space where a question can form, where only a conclusion stood before. Space where an alternative becomes visible without the original experience being denied or diminished. Space where a person or situation that had been completely known becomes slightly and genuinely open again. What remains open has not yet finished offering what it holds. The blind men were not foolish. They were the entirely ordinary result of attentive minds, working with incomplete information and no position from which the incompleteness could be perceived, which is not a failure of character, but the structural condition of being, located somewhere specific in a world that is everywhere larger than any single location. The king's experiment was not designed to expose or humiliate them. It was a provision, the introduction of a perspective wide enough that the whole animal became available, without requiring any man to surrender the genuine accuracy of what his own hands had found. You do not need to surrender what your direct experience has given you. What the story is asking for is smaller than that, and worth considerably more. It is asking for the willingness to hold your experience the way a careful navigator holds a chart of waters they know well, accurate within its documented range, genuinely reliable within those limits, and representing only a portion of a sea that extends past the chart's edges in every direction. The chart is real. The waters are larger. Holding both of these things simultaneously, without requiring them to resolve into a single consistent picture, is not confusion. It is the quality of attention that makes honest navigation possible. What shifts practically in the calmer of ordinary moments when this willingness arrives? The quality of attention changes. A mind holding its certainties with some flexibility notices what a defended mind filters out. It responds to what is actually present, rather than to the anticipated repetition of what has always seemed to be present. The intention beneath its actions moves from defended to genuinely curious, and curious intention generates different consequences than defended intention does. Quietly, across ordinary days, in the texture of interactions that seem unremarkable, while they are happening and reveal their weight only afterward. The conversation that always went one way discovers it can go another, not because anyone performed a dramatic transformation, but because one person brought to it a quality of genuine openness that made room for something new to occur. The willingness itself arrives as relaxation rather than effort. It is the settling that occurs when a person realizes they have been maintaining something without quite knowing they were doing it, and then stops. The blind men in their argument were working hard, defending positions, resisting challenges, sustaining the constant pressure that certainty demands when it meets equally certain opposition from every direction. The king's wider view did not ask them to argue with greater skill. It asked them to be still and look at what had been standing in front of all of them the entire time. 3 stories now, and a pattern between them is becoming clear. The man with 4 wives discovered that only the quality of his intention would follow him beyond everything he had accumulated. The man who could not move found specific, workable causes upstream in the habits of his mind. And the blind men discovered that the confidence of their perception had been quietly determining the boundaries of the world available to them. Each story is a different entrance to the same understanding. What the mind creates through its intentions depends entirely on what that mind is genuinely working with, and what it is working with depends considerably on how firmly it is holding what it has already concluded to be true. What the 4th story shows is what becomes possible the moment that holding softens, caught entirely off guard by something it could not have anticipated. A monk has rowed himself to the center of a lake, seeking the stillness that only distance from distraction allows. He finds it. He descends into a quality of interior quiet that is rare and genuinely hard-won. And then, without warning, something strikes his boat. The response that rises in him is immediate, complete, and absolutely certain of its own justification. He is about to open his eyes and discover exactly where that certainty was living before the collision gave it somewhere to go. The monk had chosen his location with deliberate care. Not the bank, where sounds from the village carried across the water in unpredictable bursts. Not the near shore, where other practitioners sometimes passed, and the movement of another body in the periphery was enough to disturb what he was trying to build. The center of the lake, the one location where distance from every edge meant genuine removal from everything competing for his attention. He had rowed there himself, unhurried and steady, feeling the particular quality of early evening on the water, the way sound softens when traveling across a surface, the way light near the horizon loses its directive quality and becomes simply present, diffuse, and releasing, as though the sky itself were setting down what it had been holding throughout the day. He settled the oars. The boat found its own stillness, as the small disturbances his rowing had produced smoothed back into the surface around him. He closed his eyes. What followed was a deepening that anyone who has sat in genuine stillness will recognize. The mind arrives at practice, carrying everything the day has deposited in it. Conversations still unresolved, small frictions still warm, the accumulated residue of hours spent among others with their own needs pulling in their own directions. These do not clear instantly when a person sits and closes their eyes. They drain slowly, the way water drains from saturated ground. He waited without trying to accelerate the clearing, without monitoring its progress, without measuring the quality of his waiting against some ideal of how waiting should proceed. He let the day continue draining out of him, and the quality that eventually filled the space was not something he had manufactured through technique or will. It arrived the way genuine quiet always arrives, through the cessation of effort, in the space that opens when a person stops working to produce what only patience can provide. He went deeper, the interpretive layer through which the mind automatically processes incoming experience The layer that names things, assigns significance, calculates relevance, began to thin. He was not assessing the quality of his practice or measuring how far he had traveled from the surface of ordinary awareness. He was simply present in the way that presence becomes available only when the attempt to achieve it has been fully relinquished. The monk had found the particular quality of awareness in which even reflexive self-monitoring had grown quiet. He recognized, with the settled recognition of someone who has been here before, that he had arrived at what he came for. Then something struck the boat. The impact was physical and sudden, a solid collision that moved the boat and sent a brief disturbance across the surface in all directions. And in the space between the impact and any thought about the impact, anger rose in him with a speed and completeness that startled him from the inside. The stillness was simply gone, replaced in the same instant by something fully formed and running at full heat, the specific fury of a person who has built something careful and had it destroyed by what felt, without any pause for examination, like another person's deliberate inattention. The anger carried its own convincing weight. It felt entirely proportionate. That proportionality felt like evidence of its accuracy, which is one of the defining qualities of this kind of anger. It justifies itself from inside itself, using the strength of the feeling as proof that the feeling is correct. The certainty arrived with the anger and was inseparable from it. Someone had rowed across this lake without attending to who else might be on the water. Someone had moved through this shared space without the basic consideration that a person sitting still in the center of a lake had chosen that position deliberately and for a reason. He had come to this precise location specifically to be undisturbed. The disturbance had originated from outside him. The logic was clear, the emotion was justified, and the difference between observing clearly and interpreting through a conditioned filter had become completely invisible from inside. That invisibility is the characteristic quality of anger at its full height. It presents itself as direct perception, furnishes its own evidence, and the gap between what is actually present and what the mind expects to be present closes entirely. He was already forming words as he opened his eyes. The lake was empty. No other boat, no second presence anywhere on the water. Drifting toward him, moved only by the slow and directionless patience of the current, was an empty, wooden boat. No oars at work, no one steering. An unmanned vessel that had found its way here through the unintended physics of wind and water, arriving with the complete indifference of an object following the path of least resistance, the only path available to something no one is guiding. Nothing had been aimed at him. There had been no inattention, because there had been no one present to be inattentive. A boat had drifted, and the monk's mind had converted this, in the single instant between impact and opening his eyes, into an act of another person's specific failing, complete with the detailed character of that failing and the fully assembled emotional response, determined to be appropriate. He sat with this, with the speed of what had risen in him, with the completeness of it, with the absolute certainty that had organized itself around an explanation having no basis in what had actually occurred. He had been certain someone was there. There was no one. He had been certain an intention had produced the impact. There had been no intention at all. The sitting showed him something he had not come here to find. The anger had not been generated by the collision. It had been present before the collision, organized, available, held in readiness, somewhere below the apparent stillness he had worked to build. The impact had not created the heat. It had opened a passage through which heat, already waiting, could move. Had someone actually been in the other boat, the anger would have found its target, and the monk would have spent the evening in the comfortable certainty of his own justification, entirely unaware that what he felt had not originated where he directed it. The empty boat removed that possibility. It returned the feeling to its actual address, simply by leaving nowhere else for it to be located. What had seemed like a response to the world turned out to be a revealing of the interior. This is where the video's central teaching finds its most immediate expression. The Dhammapada says mind is the forerunner of all things. The four wives showed what that forerunning produces across an entire life. The angry monk on the lake shows what it produces across a single instant. A mind that has practiced responding to friction with immediate, unexamined anger becomes, through that accumulated practice, a mind that holds anger in a state of readiness, just below ordinary awareness. A mind that has practiced introducing a pause before responding builds, through the same kind of repetition, a quality of space between sensation and automatic reaction. Neither is built through a single, decisive choice. Both accumulate through ordinary moments, each apparently negligible, each adding its quiet increment to what the mind is gradually becoming. This is how the mind creates its karma at the most intimate possible scale. The healing available here arrives as recognition rather than instruction. Most people understand emotional responses as originating primarily out there, in the circumstances, the other people, the conditions surrounding them. When something difficult arises, the mind moves outward. What is causing this? The search proceeds toward the situation, toward whoever appears responsible, toward what might be rearranged to prevent the same arising again. Circumstances carry real effects, and the monk was conducting exactly this search, moving in the direction the anger was pointing, locating a target, composing a response, until the empty lake showed him the direction the anger had been pointing was not the direction of the actual source. What the empty boat offered was not condemnation. It removed the external location the feeling had been assigned to and returned it quietly to its actual origin. The anger was his, the product of a mind shaped by its own history of responses. The collision simply revealing what that history had deposited below the surface, the way an unexpected shift in the tide reveals what the ordinary water level has been quietly keeping out of view. This is not a verdict about character, It is, for anyone who receives it clearly, one of the most freeing realizations available. What arises from conditions within the mind can be changed by tending those conditions. The monk stayed with the question, rather than resolving it quickly into an explanation that would restore his comfort. He sat with genuine uncertainty, which is difficult for a mind accustomed to closing open questions efficiently. He stayed, not because he knew what the staying would produce, because the staying was the honest response to what the empty boat had shown him. That willingness to remain with what is true rather than retreat to what is manageable, this is itself a quality of intention. The first wife, receiving something. What changes when this understanding settles in is subtle in appearance and significant in effect. The anger does not stop arising. What changes is what the mind does the moment anger arises. A small space begins to develop between the sensation and the automatic movement toward the nearest external explanation. Not large, not always reliable, but real. Inside that space lives the possibility of a chosen response. A chosen response generates different karma than an automatic one, even when the two look identical from outside. Each chosen pause, each small decision to inquire rather than react, accumulates quietly into what the mind is becoming, one ordinary moment at a time. 4 stories have now traveled together through this listening. Karma is the quality of intention behind every act. The body registers faithfully what the mind has been practicing. The certainties held most firmly determine what the mind can actually perceive. And the source of what we feel lives far closer to home than the outward search tends to find. Each is a facet of the same understanding that the mind actively shapes experience through every response it chooses or fails to choose across all the ordinary days. The 5th story moves into the most intimate territory yet. It arrives with a question the previous 4 have been quietly preparing the ground for. What happens when the mind that has genuinely recognized itself as the source of its own karma still cannot find stillness? When the very effort to clear the water creates new turbulence? When the person who understands exactly what the tradition teaches about calm lies awake in the dark, working harder at the very thing they know will not help, unable to stop? The answer involves a stream, a traveling monk, and one of the most counterintuitive and most compassionate instructions in all of Buddhist teaching. Go back to the stream. That was the complete instruction. No clarification of what going back would accomplish. No description of what Ananda would find there. No suggestion that conditions had changed since his first visit 20 minutes earlier. Just the direction to return, to walk back along the road they had already covered, in the full weight of summer heat, toward water he already knew was undrinkable. Ananda had already been to the stream once that afternoon. He had found it in a condition that made his bowl immediately useless, thick with the disturbance left by a procession of ox carts that had recently crossed, the heavy wheels churning through the bed, until silt and clay rose through the entire water column, turning what had been a clear and reliable current into something the color of old clay. He had assessed the situation with the practical intelligence that characterized his service, identified an obvious alternative. A clean river lay a reasonable distance ahead along their route, and returned to report his findings. He had expected what any sensible response to sensible reporting would look like: a small redirection, a different plan, a reasonable decision made from available information. Instead, go back to the stream. The heat of that summer afternoon deserves a moment, because it is part of what the story holds. It had been building for days rather than arriving fresh each morning, the kind of accumulated heat that presses down on a traveler and makes each mile cost more than the last. That turns the body's resources into a running negotiation between what the journey requires and what the body has left to give. The Buddha had aged, and the texts record his fatigue plainly, with the spare honesty that characterizes these early accounts. He was tired, he was thirsty, he needed water. None of that made the instruction to return to an unusable stream any less puzzling. Nothing about the practical situation had changed since Ananda's first visit. The stream was muddy, the bowl was empty, the river ahead was clean. The logic of the moment pointed entirely in one direction, and the instruction pointed in the other. Ananda went. He was a person of faithful service and genuine intelligence, and he had been close to this teaching long enough to understand that an instruction which appears to contradict practical logic may be doing something that practical logic alone is not equipped to perceive. He did not require an explanation before complying. He returned along the road they had come, bowl in hand, moving back toward a stream he already knew would require nothing from the bowl he was carrying, at least not yet, and not in any way he understood. The willingness to return toward what is not yet usable, simply because someone whose understanding you trust has said to go back, this is worth pausing on before the story continues. It is a specific quality of trust, the kind that exists only where earned understanding already lives. That quality of trust is itself a form of intention. The first wife, walking beside him on a summer road. He found the stream exactly as he had left it, brown and moving, carrying its suspended cargo of silt in the indifferent way of water that is simply being water, unconcerned with any use anyone had planned for it. He set the bowl beside him and sat down at the bank. The instruction, received in its entirety, was this: sit at the bank, observe, and do not interfere. Do not enter the water. Do not attempt to assist the clearing. Do not apply any method, technique, or practical capability to this situation. Sit, observe, wait. For a person of Ananda's practical capability, this was perhaps the most demanding possible instruction. Capable people in the presence of a solvable problem feel the pull towards solution with a particular force. The stream was carrying silt. Ananda understood how streams work. He was sitting at the bank of a situation his competence was fully prepared to address, watching a problem he could probably help with, and the instruction was to help with nothing at all. This is where faithful intelligence most often generates its own difficulty, the gap between what the hands are capable of doing and the instruction to keep them still. He sat, he watched, he waited. The stream moved past him without hurrying, brown and continuous and unconcerned. The ox carts, whose crossing had caused this disturbance, were long gone, had moved past before Ananda arrived the first time. The event that had raised all this silt was already finished. What remained was the aftermath, the accumulated suspension of everything that crossing had displaced, still traveling through the water column, still rendering the stream temporarily unfit for the purpose Ananda needed it to serve. The cause was past. Only the consequence was still moving. This matters enormously to what the story has to teach. The disturbance was not ongoing. Nothing was continuing to add to it. The silt already in suspension would eventually descend to the streambed on its own. This is what silt does when the force that lifted it has spent itself and the water is allowed to continue without new interference. The stream was not broken. It was not compromised in any permanent way. It was doing exactly what a stream does after a disturbance, moving through the aftermath of something that had already passed, carrying the suspended material downstream, gradually releasing it back to the bed, returning to clarity through the ordinary functioning of its own nature. All this required was time and the absence of new disturbance during that time. Nothing else. Nothing more sophisticated than that. Ananda watched the clearing begin. It did not start from the center outward, where the current runs strongest. It started from the edges, where the water moves with less force, where the particles suspended in it are subject to less of what keeps them aloft, where the descent to the bed requires the least from the water's own momentum. The periphery of the stream began to clear first, a band of cleaner water at either bank that widened gradually toward the middle as the process worked inward. He watched this happen without moving toward the stream as it progressed, without leaning forward in preparation to act. The moment acting became possible, he stayed with the process, at the pace the process itself was keeping, and the watching became a particular kind of practice, one he had not been told he was practicing. There is a quality of attention that becomes available when a person genuinely releases the drive to intervene. It differs from the attention of someone waiting for the moment when action becomes appropriate. That attention is already partly elsewhere, already organizing the response that will be delivered when the signal arrives. The attention of genuine non-interference is fully present to what is actually occurring, because it has nothing in preparation. It receives more of what is there because it is not preoccupied with what comes next. Ananda, sitting at the bank with an empty bowl and no plan, was practicing this without knowing the practicing had any purpose beyond the instruction to wait. When the water was clear, he filled the bowl and walked back. What the tradition carries forward from this story is the parallel between the stream and the mind, a parallel the teaching demonstrates rather than explains. because the direct witnessing of a stream clearing itself transmits something that verbal description of the parallel cannot replace. Still, the words are these: the mind and the stream share the same fundamental response to disturbance. Both have their contents lifted when something crosses through them with sufficient force. Both carry what was displaced upward into the visible, where it makes everything murky and temporarily unreadable. And both are capable of clearing completely, given the conditions their own nature requires for that clearing to proceed. The essential condition is the same in both: the removal of additional interference, while the settling is already underway. The carts were gone. The cause of the disturbance had passed. What remained was the aftermath, and the aftermath would resolve without assistance if no new disturbance was introduced. The same holds for the mind after a difficult experience has moved through it. The conversation that raised the silt is usually already over. The circumstance that sent everything into suspension has typically already passed. What remains is the aftermath, and the mind that understands this can sit at its own bank without its hands in the water and trust the clearing already underway. This is where the Karma teaching running through this video finds its most intimate expression. The quality of intention the tradition identifies as the root of karma is generated not only through deliberate acts, but continuously through every repeated response to every recurring situation, including the situation of the mind encountering its own turbulence. A mind that has practiced responding to interior disturbance by immediately engaging with it, examining it, working on it, while the silt is still in full suspension, trains itself across those repetitions into a particular kind of chronic unrest. Each engagement adds motion to water that needs stillness. Each attempt to process what needs time, rather than processing, reinforces the habit of reaching for effort precisely when effort delays what it is pursuing. This accumulates. It builds a quality of interior life that is persistently unsettled, not because the disturbances are too severe, but because the response to them has been systematically preventing the resolution it believes it is accelerating. Sit at the bank. Observe. Do not interfere. For the person who has been working hardest on themselves, these words carry a specific weight. The person who has invested genuine effort in understanding their patterns, who can articulate clearly where their recurring difficulties originate, who has developed real capacity for honest self-examination, this person is not exempt from adding interference to disturbance. Their tools are excellent, and the habit of reaching for them is deeply ingrained. What the instruction is offering is the recognition that there is a time for the bank and a time for the bowl. Ananda's two visits are both necessary. The first shows what the situation requires. The second waits for the situation to provide it. Going back to the muddy stream is understanding that some things clear on their own terms, and the service required in those moments is the particular discipline of not helping. The karma generated through this practice across ordinary time is quiet in appearance. What it builds through repeated occasions of choosing the bank over the intervention is a quality of trust in the mind's own capacity to return to clarity after disturbance. A mind that has accumulated this trust meets difficult experience differently. Less urgency in the encountering, less expenditure of effort in the places where effort only adds to what it is attempting to resolve, more willingness to be present to what is actually happening, rather than immediately working to convert it into something more comfortable. This is what the first wife receives from the practice of sitting at the bank, the steady accumulation of a mind that has learned, across many disturbed streams and many patient sittings, that it already contains what it has been looking for. Ananda returned with the bowl full. The Buddha drank. Nothing of what passed between them afterward is recorded in the text, and the absence is deliberate. The teaching had already completed itself at the bank of the stream, in the interval between the instruction and the filling of the bowl. Ananda had been given conditions, and the conditions had done what they always do when they are honored. They allowed a process already underway to arrive at its natural conclusion. The water that filled the bowl was not temporarily quieted into usability. It was actually completely, fully clear, the clarity of a thing that has settled all the way down to its own nature, with nothing remaining in suspension. That quality of clarity cannot be manufactured by effort or willed into existence through technique. It arrives only when the one who might have kept interfering has finally grown still, and the process that was always going to complete itself has been given the one condition it requires: the patient, sustained absence of new disturbance. 5 stories have now traveled through this listening, and between them a steady direction has emerged. What follows us beyond everything we accumulate in a life, what the body faithfully registers when the mind's habitual patterns go unexamined, what the certainties held most firmly cost the mind that has stopped questioning them, where the actual source of what we feel lives, and what the mind that has recognized itself as the shaper of its own experience needs when it has temporarily exceeded its own capacity. Each story, a different entrance into the same understanding, arriving at a slightly deeper level each time. Your mind creates your karma through every deliberate choice, every habitual response, every moment of genuine patience, and every hour of real stillness offered to a disturbed interior that already knows the way back to clear. The 6th story now. It comes from the oldest collections of the Buddhist canon, and it asks what the most powerful quality of intention actually looks like when it arrives fully in a human life. The answer is not what anyone accustomed to measuring power by visible dimensions would expect. It comes through a woman who owned almost nothing, who spent an entire day acquiring the means for a single small lamp, who lit that lamp with her whole heart, spoke a prayer that asked nothing for herself, and went home, and whose flame, the following morning, neither wind nor the hands of the greatest teacher in the community could put out. She had been watching the preparations all week, from her place at the edge of the road, with the particular stillness of someone who has learned that stillness costs nothing, and costs nothing is a budget she could afford. She observed what wealth looks like when it moves with purpose. The carriages bearing offerings, the bolts of fabric carried carefully through the monastery gates, the polished lamps of brass and silver arriving on the shoulders of servants who belonged to households she had never been invited into. Princes had been coming, merchants, the kind of people whose names the city knew and whose generosity would be spoken of in the same breath as their names, which is its own form of currency. The currency of being seen, doing a visible thing in a visible way. She was none of these things. She was an elderly woman without household, without position, without the kind of accumulated circumstance that makes generosity a manageable act, rather than an act of complete self-expenditure. What she had was one coin. The texts that carry this story are precise about this detail, and the precision matters. Not a small amount of money, not modest means, not what remained after obligations were met. One coin, the entirety of what she possessed in material terms, received through a day of begging along roads that do not always yield what a day's asking deserves. She held it, and she considered what it could be made to do. She went to the oil seller. He looked at the coin and named the truth of it plainly. This amount would not purchase a lamp's worth of oil. He was not unkind. He was simply a person of business, and the business of oil selling operates on a logic that one coin does not satisfy. She told him what she intended to do with the oil. She did not make a case for herself or argue the quality of her intention as a reason he should accommodate her. She simply told him she wanted to light a lamp for the Buddha, and she had one coin, and she wanted to use it for that purpose, and she was telling him this because he had asked her why she wanted so little. The oil seller gave her enough oil for a lamp. Something in how she told him had communicated something that the coin alone had not. The quality of intention, even before it has produced its act, reaches beyond the act it is preparing. It moves in the space between people before anything visible has yet occurred, in the way that warmth from a fire reaches across a room before anyone has moved toward the flame. He gave her the oil, and she thanked him, and she went to the monastery with one small lamp worth of oil in a vessel she was carrying, with the careful attention that you give to something when it is the only thing you have. The lamps were everywhere that night. The monastery grounds held the combined light of the most elaborate offerings the city's wealthiest households had been able to provide. Lamps of polished metal, burning refined oil, attended by servants, whose job was to maintain their burning through the night, sustained by resources that made the sustaining effortless. She found a place among them for her lamp and lit it. Then she made her dedication. The prayer she offered is recorded in the source texts, and it is worth receiving in full because its content is the teaching the story has been building toward. She asked that, in offering this lamp, she might be blessed with the lamp of wisdom, that through this lamp she might help liberate all beings from their darkness, that she might purify whatever obscures clear seeing in herself and in others, that she might be a light for those who have not yet found their way. She asked nothing for herself in any ordinary sense. No improvement in material circumstances, no personal advancement, no recognition, no return on what she had spent. Her single coin's worth of oil was offered outward, completely, with a heart whose entire orientation in the moment of offering was toward the liberation of others. She went home. She did not stay to watch. She had offered what she came to offer, said what she came to say, and the rest was no longer hers to manage. Night passed. In the way of nights when many lamps are burning, the oil in most of them diminished across the hours. The flames shrank and guttered, and by the deep hours before morning the majority had gone dark. The refined oil of the wealthy, having demonstrated that even refined oil observes the mathematics of finite supply. One by one they failed. The elaborate lamps of brass and silver burned as long as what filled them could sustain burning, and then did what all flames do when their fuel is gone. They went out. Her lamp was still burning at dawn. The senior monk charged with clearing the lamps in the morning came to his work in the practical spirit of a person performing a familiar task. He went through the grounds extinguishing what remained, a straightforward and unremarkable duty, until he reached her lamp. He brought it to his lips and blew. The flame bent and straightened and continued burning. He tried a second time with more deliberate force. The flame bent and straightened and continued burning. He tried with his fingers, the method that works when breath is insufficient. The flame continued. He tried with the edge of his robe, a technique that addresses flames that resist all ordinary approach. The flame continued. He stood and looked at a lamp that behaved the way no lamp, in his experience, had ever behaved. The Buddha, who had witnessed this, came to him. He said, "You will not be able to extinguish that lamp. You could not move it with all the water in the ocean poured upon it. You could not drown it with every river gathered into a single pouring." Then he said the sentence that explains everything that preceded it and illuminates everything about the nature of karma and intention. The entire video has been approaching. This lamp was offered with a pure and unshakable mind. Not with money, not with skill or influence, or the kind of social position that makes generous acts feel safer, because the risk of them is softened by abundance. With a pure and unshakable mind. The purity is the quality of intention that held nothing back and asked nothing in return. The unshakability is the quality of a mind so settled in its dedication that circumstance had nothing to attach to, no anxiety about the adequacy of the offering, no comparison with what wealthier people were lighting that same night, no diminished giving, because the giving was small by every visible measure. The offering was complete. Complete means without remainder. She had offered entirely, from a mind that was entirely present to what it was doing, and the entirety is precisely what made it inextinguishable. The lamp was still burning. Hold that image for a moment before the teaching continues, because the image is doing work that words are still preparing to do. A flame that should, by every physical and logical expectation, be long gone, persisting past the oil that was supposed to fuel it, resisting every conventional approach to extinguishing, continuing simply because of the quality of mind from which it was given. The tradition is telling us something through this image that it has been telling us through every story in this video. But here, it makes it completely plain. The mind behind the act is not an addition to the act. It is not an enhancing factor or a bonus quality that makes the act marginally more effective. The mind behind the act is the act's actual substance. Everything else, the material offered, the scale of the gesture, the visible cost, the social legibility of the giving, is the lamp's brass. The pure and unshakable intention is the flame itself, and the flame is what does not go out. This is what the Dhammapada means when it says that if one acts with a serene mind, happiness follows as a shadow that never departs. The following is not metaphorical, or hoped for, or contingent on favorable circumstances. The shadow cannot be separated from what casts it. This is the nature of the relationship, mind of a particular quality, generating karma of a corresponding quality, producing consequences that carry that quality forward, in the way that clear water carries the quality of its source, even across great distance from where it first emerged. Now a voice enters the teaching that has been present in the background of Buddhist history since the 8th century, and whose words arrive here as the natural companion to this story. A monk and scholar of Nalanda, one of the greatest centers of learning the ancient world produced, who spent his life examining what suffering is made of and what is capable of dissolving it. His name was Shantideva, and the text he left behind is a careful and systematic examination of the mind that is capable of the kind of offering the woman in this story made. From the 8th chapter of that text, a verse: all the suffering in the world arises from seeking happiness for oneself. All the happiness in the world arises from seeking happiness for others. Sit with this. It sounds clean and simple, and the cleanliness is deceptive in the way that very precise things are always deceptive. They appear to be saying something obvious until the moment you actually let them land, and then what appeared obvious opens into something that requires the full attention of every story you have already heard tonight to receive completely. The woman's prayer had not asked for her own liberation first. Her prayer was for all beings, and the self she brought to the offering was a self-oriented, so entirely outward that the ordinary boundary between what I am doing for myself and what I am doing for others had become invisible to her. This is what Shantideva is pointing at. The seeking of happiness for others is not an act of self-sacrifice in which the self is diminished by what it gives away. It is the discovery of a quality of mind in which the self is enlarged beyond its ordinary dimensions by the completeness of the giving, a mind so fully engaged in the direction of another's well-being that the contracted, defended, perpetually anxious movement of a mind seeking only its own comfort simply has no room to operate. The suffering dissolves, not because circumstances improve, but because the mind that was generating the suffering from the inside has been replaced, in this moment, by a mind oriented entirely elsewhere. And that replacement produces what the woman's lamp produced, something that does not go out. This is where the healing the sixth story carries lands most directly. The wellness culture that most of this video's listeners have been swimming in for years carries a consistent message about the direction of care. Attend to yourself first. Fill your own cup. You cannot pour from empty. These are not worthless instructions. There are conditions in which they address something real. But the tradition that produced this story and this verse points at something the self-first model consistently misses, that the mind turned entirely toward its own well-being as its central preoccupation generates, through that very preoccupation, the contracted quality of awareness in which suffering is most reliably produced. The lamp filled entirely with concern for its own burning does not throw light outward, and a lamp that throws no light outward is, by the standards of what a lamp is for, failing at the fundamental task of its existence, which is not its own burning, but the illumination it offers to whatever and whoever stands in the darkness around it. The woman who owned one coin and lit one lamp for others was not demonstrating admirable selflessness as an ideal to be aspired to across a lifetime of effortful practice. She was demonstrating something about the nature of a mind that has found its own most natural orientation toward the benefit of others, freely and completely, with nothing held in reserve. That orientation is not the product of advanced spiritual attainment. It is available in any ordinary moment to any ordinary person who chooses to bring it. The choice does not require a monastery, a coin, or a lamp. It requires only the quality of attention that asks, in any moment where action is possible, what does this situation need from me? And am I willing to give it without calculation? Every time that question is answered with genuine willingness, the first wife receives something. Every time the giving is complete rather than managed, offered without a portion held back against the risk that the giving might cost more than expected, the flame burns. Not visibly, not in any way that others will necessarily witness or that will be recorded in any text, but in the way the woman's lamp burned through the night while the elaborate lamps of the wealthy went dark one by one, because the quality of the giving determines the quality of what the giving becomes, and what is given from a pure and unshakable mind becomes something that no ordinary force can extinguish. This is your mind creating your karma at the level where karma is most fundamentally generated. Every act of genuine, outward orientation, every moment of real care, extended without the small interior calculation of what the extending will cost or return, each of these is accumulating in the texture of what the mind is becoming. A mind that has practiced this across ordinary occasions, repeated across ordinary time, develops a quality of spaciousness in which the contracted experience of a self perpetually managing its own comfort begins to lose its grip. The suffering the grip was generating diminishes, as Shantideva said it would, not because it was argued out of existence, but because the mind that was producing it through inward orientation has been slowly, through practice, turned outward, opened into the larger territory of a life that is genuinely, sustainably, and inextinguishably about something beyond its own maintenance. The flame was still burning when the sun came up. After the oil was gone, after every practical basis for its continuing had been exhausted, it held. Because the mind that lit it had given everything it had with a completely open hand, and everything given that way is kept in a form that ordinary diminishment cannot reach. The woman walked home the night before, without watching to see whether what she had offered would last. She knew, in the way that genuine giving always knows, that what is truly given is no longer subject to the conditions that govern what is kept. She had made it a lamp for everyone. That is why it burned for everyone. That is why it burned on. 6 stories have now moved through this listening, and something has been building between them that the 7th story will now take into territory that surprises even those who believe they have understood what the first 6 were pointing toward. Because there is a figure who spent more years in the company of this teaching than perhaps anyone alive during its earliest flowering, who served with devotion and capability and complete dedication, who remembered everything and missed nothing, who was present for every teaching and faithful to every instruction, and who still, by the eve of the most important gathering of his entire life, had not found what he had been seeking. What happened to him in the hours before dawn, in the specific moment when he finally stopped, is one of the most quietly astonishing things in the entire tradition. He had been there for all of it. Every teaching the Buddha delivered across 45 years of traveling through northern India, Ananda had heard it. Not most of it, not the significant discourses, or the ones that happened to find him present by favorable circumstance. All of it. He had made himself available with the specific dedication of someone who understood that being present for what is happening is itself a form of practice, and he had sustained that availability across decades with a consistency that no other disciple had matched. He was the tradition's living memory, the person who, when a teaching needed to be confirmed, or a sequence of events required reconstruction, could close his eyes and return to the original occasion with the reliability of a record that had never failed to hold what was deposited in it. He had also been the Buddha's attendant in the most intimate, practical sense. He carried water. He arranged resting places. He managed the constant traffic of people who arrived wanting access to the teacher and needed someone at the threshold who could assess what each moment required and respond accordingly. He walked the long roads across seasons and decades, absorbing everything, forgetting nothing, present for the private conversations and the large public discourses and every occasion in between. When the Buddha was ill, Ananda stayed through the nights without being asked. When the Buddha was dying, it was Ananda who wept, openly, without converting the grief into something more spiritually presentable, and the weeping was not held against him, because genuine love expressing itself through genuine loss is not a failure of practice, but evidence of a heart that has given everything it had to what it loved. He had given everything he had, and he was not yet free. The tradition does not present this as a personal failing. It presents it as a fact about the nature of the mind and the nature of the path, a fact that Ananda's story illuminates precisely because his dedication was so complete and his understanding so comprehensive. If someone of such complete dedication and such complete understanding had still not arrived, then arrival clearly requires something other than dedication and understanding, however complete they are. This is the question the story holds open until the last hour before dawn. Among the Buddha's closest circle, Ananda was the one who had been present for the most, and remembered the most, and carried the most. And by the time the Buddha died, and the era of his direct teaching came to its end, Ananda had not achieved what the tradition identifies as full awakening. Not through any absence of dedication, not through any gap in understanding. He understood what he had heard with the precision of a person who had spent more years with this teaching than almost anyone alive. But the tradition distinguishes between comprehensive understanding and the particular interior shift it calls full liberation. And Ananda, by the time the Buddha died, had achieved the first without arriving at the second. The first council was convened to preserve and codify everything the Buddha had taught across those 45 years. 500 of the tradition's most accomplished practitioners were to gather, and the gathering required, by the standards of those who convened it, that all present had achieved full awakening. This was not a procedural formality. It was the recognition that a council intended to verify and transmit the teaching with complete accuracy needed participants whose perception was no longer distorted by the subtle turbulence that accompanies any mind still carrying its own unresolved business. You cannot reliably transmit the teaching you have not yet fully received. The tradition held this with clarity and without exception, and Ananda, the person most essential to the council's purpose, did not meet its central requirement. He could not attend. What he did with the night before the council begins is the story. He practiced with the particular quality of effort that belongs to someone who has genuinely run out of alternative approaches and now faces the single remaining option of bringing everything they have to the one thing that has resisted every previous application of everything they had. He brought to the night the accumulated weight of decades of careful understanding and the accumulated frustration of that understanding having not, across all those decades, is been sufficient to produce the interior shift he was working toward. He sat in meditation. He worked through the approaches that had served him across years of practice, giving each one the full quality of his attention. He brought his entire history of practice to each method in sequence, without the impatience of someone cycling through options, but with the thorough and dignified effort of a person who will be able to say, when the night ends, that he left nothing unattempted. Nothing happened. The hours moved through the night with the particular quality of hours that are being waited through for a result that does not arrive. He continued through the middle of the night and into the later hours, when the body's inclination towards sleep begins to compete seriously with the will's determination to remain alert. He worked through that competition as he had worked through everything else. He applied more effort where the effort seemed to be making least progress, which is the natural response of a disciplined mind encountering resistance, and which produced, as it had been producing across the entire night, exactly nothing different from what the preceding hours had produced. The night was not offering him what he was asking it for. He could feel the dawn approaching. He had perhaps hours left before the council would begin, and he was no closer to what the council required than he had been when the night began. Near dawn, he made a decision. He would rest, not in abandonment of what he was working toward. The tradition makes this distinction with care. He was not surrendering his intention or withdrawing his dedication. He was acknowledging that his body had reached the genuine end of what it could sustain in upright practice, and that, continuing to demand from it what it could no longer provide, was generating a quality of effort that had ceased to serve the purpose effort is supposed to serve. He would lie down. He would allow the body its honest need, and in the morning, whatever the morning offered, he would continue. He began to lie down. The tradition preserves the specific physical sequence of this moment with the kind of precision that signals how much the moment was understood to matter. He inclined his body toward the horizontal, releasing the upright posture of the night's practice, moving through the transition toward rest. His head was approaching the pillow. He had not yet arrived. He was between the two positions, no longer upright in the practiced effort of the night, not yet arrived at the rest he was descending toward when the shift occurred. Before his head touched the pillow, Ananda was free. The tradition states this plainly, without the additions that a storyteller reaching for impact might be tempted to provide. There is no description of how the moment felt from inside, no record of what recognition accompanied the arrival. Just the spare account of a person in a specific physical transition and the fact of what completed itself within it. The plainness is not restraint. It is the tradition's acknowledgement that this kind of arrival does not organize itself into descriptions that can be borrowed and transferred. The most honest way to honor it is to report what happened without converting it into imagery that makes it feel more available than it actually is. No technique produced this. No method was responsible for its arrival. No increase in effort. No discovery of the right approach. No final push that broke through where previous pushes had failed. The understanding arrived in the moment when he stopped working toward it, and this is not a poetic rendering of the sequence, but the literal account the tradition preserves. He was moving toward rest. He was releasing the night's sustained effort into the body's honest need. And in the space that opened when the trying released its grip, what he had been working toward for decades completed itself. Now, the Karma teaching at the center of this video finds its most interior expression. The Dhammapada says mind is the forerunner of all things. Every story in this video has approached this teaching from a different direction. The man with 4 wives showed that the quality of intention behind each act of a life determines the only thing that genuinely follows us. The body of the wealthy man showed what the mind's habitual patterns eventually write in physical form when left unexamined. The elephant showed what the certainties held most firmly cost the mind that has stopped questioning them. The empty boat showed that the source of what we feel lives far closer to home than the outward search tends to find. The muddy stream showed that the mind's own nature, given genuine non-interference, will always return to the clarity it never actually lost. And Ananda's night shows something about the forerunning mind that may be the most counterintuitive thing the tradition has to offer, that the effort to use the mind as an instrument for transforming itself can, at a certain level of sustained intensity, become the primary obstruction to the transformation it is attempting. The effortful seeking mind holds 2 things simultaneously: the current condition and the desired condition, with the distance between them experienced as a gap to be closed by sufficient application of will. This holding is itself a form of grasping. Grasping is the quality the tradition consistently identifies as the root mechanism through which suffering perpetuates itself. The mind straining toward liberation through the mechanism of grasping is, in the very act of straining, practicing and reinforcing the quality it is trying to dissolve. This does not make the effort worthless. 45 years of devoted practice had filled Ananda with everything that the moment before the pillow required. But the final movement could not be made by the effort. It could only happen in the honest release of effort, and that release could not be manufactured as a deliberate technique. His body had to genuinely need rest. He had to actually give up the night's work and begin the real physical movement of lying down in complete surrender to what the body honestly required. That complete surrender was the condition, and the condition, when genuinely met, allowed what had been accumulating across 45 years to arrive at its completion. There is a teaching the tradition offers about this specific dynamic that Ananda's story makes visible in the most concrete possible way. The preparation cannot be skipped. The years of sitting and listening and serving and remembering were not wasted effort preceding the real event. They were the ground from which the real event grew, as roots grow invisibly across years of dark before the season that finally allows them to express what they have been building all along. The ground needs the years, and the years need, at their completion, the single genuine moment of release that allows what they have been preparing to surface. The healing this story carries lands in a specific place. For the person who has been working on themselves with genuine dedication and genuine intelligence, who has brought real effort to understanding their patterns and real commitment to changing them, who has been doing this long enough to feel the particular frustration of consistent and careful effort, yielding results that still fall short of the interior freedom they were working toward. This story is saying something direct. Everything you have brought to the practice of your own life across all the years of bringing it has been accumulating in the way that Ananda's decades accumulated. The first wife has been receiving every moment of real attention, every choice made on the side of honesty and care every hard-won insight into what has been driving the patterns you have been working to understand and change. None of it was wasted. All of it is still there. That accumulation is real in the way that roots are real during the years when nothing appears above the surface. The visible result is not the measure of the process. The process runs whether or not the surface shows evidence of it. Building quietly, what will one day allow what has been growing in the dark to complete its emergence. And there are moments when the next step is genuine release of effort, the actual, physically real decision to let the attempt conclude without the result it was pursuing, to stop working on the problem, to allow the body its honest rest, and to discover that what has been accumulating across years of careful practice was waiting precisely for this quality of spaciousness to appear before completing itself. This is not a teaching about giving up. It is a teaching about the relationship between preparation and arrival. Preparation creates the conditions. Arrival requires the release of the preparing. You cannot receive what you are prepared for while still actively engaged in preparing to receive it. At some point, the work has to be genuinely set down, not as a technique for accelerating arrival by pretending to release while still monitoring for results, but as an actual surrender into the honest needs of a body and a mind that have given everything the night required of them. Ananda attended the council. He recited everything he had heard across 45 years, beginning each account with the words, "Thus have I heard," his voice threading through every discourse he transmitted, the signature of a person whose service to the teaching had been complete and without reservation. His memory had always been the tradition's archive. What changed that morning was the quality of the presence from which the archive spoke. No longer the record of an understanding held carefully from outside, but the living expression of an understanding that had, in the honest movement of a tired body toward a pillow, finally arrived at its own ground. Your mind creates your karma through every choice made with genuine intention, and through every moment of genuine surrender to what the moment actually requires. The karma of real effort and the karma of real rest are both accumulating, working toward the same destination through different and equally necessary means. Both require the quality that has threaded through every story in this video, complete presence to what this specific moment is asking for, without substituting what a different moment required in its place. The effort when effort is needed. The setting down when setting down is what the moment requires. The discernment to know the difference, and the trust to act on what the discernment shows. The eighth story asks what a single act of genuine compassion, given freely to the smallest of creatures, is actually capable of setting in motion. The teacher had been watching the boy's face for several days before he said anything, not with the visible attention of a person whose concern has been aroused and who wants the other person to understand that it has been aroused, with the quiet, peripheral watching of someone who has learned to receive what faces carry without directing them toward any particular expression. He had practiced long enough that certain things had become available to his perception that are not available to straightforward observation, the way a quality of remaining time can accumulate in a person's face, the way weather accumulates in a sky before anything visible has yet been done about it. What he found there, across those days of careful watching, was something he recognized from other faces across many years and had hoped not to find here. The boy had very little time. He did not tell him. There is a specific and difficult wisdom in knowing which truths serve the person who would receive them, and which truths serve only the person who needs to speak them. And the teacher held that distinction carefully until he had arrived at what he would actually say. What he said was simple: go home, take a long rest with your family, stay as long as the visit requires, return when returning feels right, do not hurry back. The student received this as the practical and generous instruction it appeared to be, gathered what a young monk gathers for a journey of some duration, said his farewells, with the easy cheerfulness of someone who has not heard what an instruction is also carrying beneath its surface, and walked out through the monastery gates into a summer morning that had not yet decided to become difficult. He walked without urgency and without agenda. The day had been returned to him without conditions, and he moved through it in the unhurried way of a person whose attention has not been claimed by anything requiring it to look somewhere other than the road immediately ahead. The road offered itself to him. He received it simply, step by step, in the easy continuity of a person who is exactly where they are. This quality of presence, available and unencumbered before anything consequential happens, is the first thing the story asks us to hold, because it is the ground from which everything that follows grows. He was not practicing awareness as a discipline or maintaining any deliberate quality of attention. He was simply present to the road and the summer sounds and the shade of trees leaning from the bank into the path, in the natural and unfabricated way of a young person traveling with nowhere particular to be before evening. His mind was genuinely unoccupied, not emptied through effort, but simply not yet furnished with anything requiring it to be elsewhere. Most minds carry their preoccupations into every landscape they move through, so that even a beautiful road is experienced primarily as a surface the mind crosses while it is occupied elsewhere. His mind was where his feet were. He was walking, and the walking received his full presence without his having directed anything toward it. Then the stream. Heavy rain had been falling upstream for several days, and the water was running high against both banks, carrying the fast and indifferent momentum of water that has accumulated more than its ordinary channel can responsibly contain. He stopped before crossing, the way a careful traveler stops at water running unusually, and in the stopping his eye found something in the middle of the current that the stopping had not been intended to find. A small elevation of ground, barely clearing the surface of the flood, and on it, a colony of ants. The water had been rising around them long enough that the ground they occupied had reduced to this single remaining elevation, still above the flood line. but losing that advantage measurably as the minutes passed. They were alive and moving in the purposeful way of creatures that have not yet stopped trying, but the direction of the situation was clear to anyone who read it honestly. The island was shrinking. The water was not. He did not deliberate. This is what the story turns on, and it deserves a full moment of attention before continuing. The interior process that ordinarily precedes a decision. The calculation about whether an act is worth the cost, whether the beneficiaries deserve the effort, whether this particular situation falls within the reasonable scope of this particular person's responsibility. At this particular point in their day, none of this arose in the space between his seeing and his movement toward the bank. The seeing moved directly into response, the way a hand moves towards something falling before the deliberating mind has registered what the hand already knows. He was looking for what the bank could provide before the decision to act had been formally arrived at, because the decision had already made itself in the quality of the mind that was seeing, in the accumulated character of a mind that had practiced, across all the ordinary days of his young life, the simple and unglamorous habit of responding to what it found. The bank provided a branch, a fallen branch of sufficient length and manageable weight, lying where a previous flood had left it among the exposed roots of the bank trees. He carried it to the water's edge and placed it across the gap from bank to island, adjusting its position with the careful attention of someone working with what the moment provides toward a result that requires the available material to function precisely. When it held, he took his end and stood. The ants began to cross. What he did for the duration of that crossing was the most ordinary thing in its description and the most demanding in its practice. He held the branch steady. The current was pushing at his legs continuously, and the pushing required continuous adjustment to maintain the stance that kept the branch at the position and angle the crossing required. He was not standing at the comfortable edge of the operation, supervising from stability. He was in the moving water, in a position the current was working against without pause, and he held the branch steady for the complete duration of the colony's passage, because the crossing required exactly that, complete duration, and he had understood this from the moment he placed the branch. There was no renegotiation when the water became colder or the standing became more tiring. He had given something freely to a situation that had not asked him for it, and the giving held through the whole of what it required, without the internal adjustment that begins when the actual cost starts to look different from how it looked at the outset. This quality of following through completely on what was freely begun, holding steady all the way to the last ant, all the way to the end of what the branch was placed there to accomplish, is a form of integrity too quiet and too ordinary to be recognized as integrity in the moment of its practice. It is simply what it looks like when a mind means what it does. The ants crossed without acknowledging him. This matters to how the story is received. The crossing proceeded in the continuous and purposeful movement of creatures following a path that had appeared with no visible registration that the path was the product of a choice rather than a feature of the world. They moved from the diminishing island to the steady bank and continued into the undergrowth, and the transaction completed itself in the clean way of things that have simply finished what they were doing. He released the branch, stepped back onto dry ground, and continued his journey. He thought nothing particular about what had just happened. He did not carry forward any interior warmth of completed virtue, any awareness of having performed something worth remembering. The act moved behind him the way the road moved behind him, real in having occurred, no longer requiring his attention as he moved forward into the afternoon. He arrived at his family's household and stayed for the time the visit required, received with the warmth that long absence generates, and then he returned to the monastery the way he had left it, simply, without ceremony, one step at a time. The teacher saw him coming from a distance. He watched the approaching figure with the same peripheral care he had brought to those days of watching before the departure, reading as the distance between them closed what the face was now carrying versus what it had carried when the student walked out through the gates. The reading completed itself before the student had finished his approach. The shadow the teacher had read over the boy's remaining days was gone. In its place was the face of a person whose time had substantially expanded, a difference as unmistakable to his trained perception as the difference between a sky that will bring tomorrow's rain and a sky showing clear weather for the coming month. Categorical. Complete. He asked the student to describe everything that had happened on the road. The student gave a faithful account in the sequence the journey had provided. The roads, the weather, the family, the duration of the stay, and then the stream, the island, the ants, the branch, the crossing, the continuation. He gave the stream portion of the account the same narrative weight as every other portion, as something that had occurred, offered among the other things that had occurred, without retrospective emphasis or awareness that one item in the account might outweigh everything surrounding it. He had not decided this. He did not know. The teacher listened without interrupting. When the account concluded, he was quiet for the interval of a person whose understanding has just arranged itself around a specific detail, making the previously confusing legible. He told the student what he had seen in his face before the departure. He told him what he saw now. He connected these two readings to the account of the stream and the ants and the branch, without claiming more than the tradition permits about the precise mechanism through which one thing becomes another. He said, "I believe this is what changed." The Karma teaching running through this entire video arrives here at a scale that requires nothing exceptional to access. The beggar woman's lamp required a coin saved through an entire day of begging, and an oil seller's compassion, and a night of sustained burning. Ananda's liberation required 45 years of faithful practice and one final genuine surrender at the edge of sleep. The student's act at the stream required a branch, cold water at his legs, and the duration of an ant colony's crossing. Nothing was prepared in advance. Nothing was planned or preceded by any intention formed before the situation presented itself. There was only a mind open enough, when the stream presented its contents, to move from seeing to acting without the friction of an intervening deliberation about whether the acting was worth it. That quality of openness was the karma the student had been building across his ordinary days. The ants at the stream was simply the morning when the building became visible. The Dhammapada says that if one acts with a serene mind, happiness follows as a shadow that never departs. The serenity in the student's act was not the cultivated calm of formal meditation practice. It was the natural quality of a mind, unoccupied with its own position, available to what the situation actually contained, rather than managing the situation from behind a defended interior remove. The karma accumulated through that act was the karma of genuine availability, a mind that had practiced responding to what it encountered with completeness and without calculation across enough ordinary occasions that completeness had become the mind's natural posture when something required a response. And the accumulation of that posture across the student's years of ordinary living had produced, in the teacher's reading of the returning face, something that showed, in a way available to careful perception, the face of a person with more time than he had started with. This is where the healing this story carries lands directly. There are acts of genuine care you have offered across your life that no one recorded and no one acknowledged, and that you yourself have long since stopped holding as anything worth remembering. The patience extended on a day when patience was already scarce, given to someone who did not know they were receiving anything deliberately provided. The attention brought to someone overlooked in a moment when the bringing required you to stop and the stopping was inconvenient. The kindness given to something small, to a person, a creature, a situation whose smallness placed it entirely outside the register of acts the world considers worth performing. These were the branch, every one of them, placed across a gap, held steady through the crossing, released without ceremony, continued past, without the mind that performed them, pausing to record what it had done. The tradition that carries this story is telling you, through the specificity of what happened to the student after the stream, that the karma generated by those unwitnessed acts has been accumulating in the texture of what your mind is. Not as abstract credit stored somewhere distant, but as the actual ongoing consequence of actual intentions expressed in actual moments of genuine care, building, across the unremarkable days, the specific quality of mind that the first wife carries and does not release. Your small acts of genuine care have been building this quality in you. They continue building it now, in this listening, in whatever quality of attention you have brought across these hours. Each act that comes from a mind genuinely available to what a situation contains, rather than to what the mind has decided the situation should contain, adds quietly to what is accumulating. In the way that roots add quietly, and without announcement to what the ground is preparing, across the invisible years, before anything above the surface shows what the soil has been holding. the boy became a man with years the original reading had not allowed for. He received them through a branch held steady in moving water on an ordinary afternoon on a road that asked of him nothing except that he keep walking. He stopped. He looked. He responded to what he found. He held the branch steady until the last ant was safe. He let it go. He continued. The simplest things are sometimes what everything else was building toward. The ninth story is the last. A child, a road, some dirt, and a question about what the most ordinary offering, given with a whole heart, is actually worth. The child was not thinking about the Buddha when the Buddha appeared on the road. He was thinking about the granary wall, which had collapsed twice already that morning, and was now on its third attempt at a shape that would hold. The morning had claimed his full attention since early light, and the project had received it without reservation, which is the arrangement children and their cities tend to reach without negotiation. The road's edge had been supplying materials generously, damp earth of the kind that holds its shape when firmly packed, that responds to the hands with the cooperative quality of something that wants to become what you are making it, that rewards patience with a density that drier, looser earth consistently refuses to offer. The city had grown across the hours into something with real distinctions, walls with actual thickness, the granary working now on its third structural interpretation, a market established at the intersection of two lanes worn into the earth by the children's feet, a river whose course had been debated seriously and resolved in a compromise. Both competing parties declared satisfactory. It required everything the children had to give it, and they gave everything without keeping accounts of the giving. It was as real as the quality of attention that had been building it since morning, which is to say, it was entirely real. He did not hear the group approaching until they were close enough that the sound of feet on the road had already organized itself into the distinct, settled rhythm of people who have been walking for a long time and have arrived, through many miles and seasons, at a relationship with distance that is no longer contested. He looked up from the granary's third attempt. The road he had been vaguely aware of all morning, a background presence at the edge of the project's more demanding claims, had become something different in the short interval since he last attended to it. A group of monks moved along it with the forward quality of sustained practice, and at the center of the group, a figure whose manner of attending to the world around him had the effect of making everything within range feel simultaneously more present and more at ease. He looked. He did not look away. What followed bypassed every stage of a child's ordinary decision sequence. The assessment of whether an impulse is appropriate, the calculation of what it might cost to follow it, the sideways glance toward peers to determine whether the group's current mood accommodates the impulse. None of this arose. His hand reached for the granary before a decision had been formally made, scooping from its packed face a generous handful of the best of what the wall had been built from. He found a clean leaf nearby, broad and dry and unbroken, and arranged what he had scooped onto it, with the careful attention of someone presenting something of genuine value to someone of genuine importance, which was precisely the situation he understood himself to be in. He stood. He walked to the road. He knelt before the figure at the center of the group and raised the leaf with both hands. All the people of our city offer you this rice for your sustenance and the sustenance of your monks. A pause. The pause of a person ensuring the words are landing where they are aimed. We ask that you accept it. He called it rice. His hands held earth. His face carried no awareness of any discrepancy between these two facts, because from inside his understanding of the morning's work, there was none. The granary had held rice throughout its 3 structural attempts. The rice was real, harvested from the city's supply, offered with the unanimous agreement of the city's entire population, which had voted swiftly when the idea arose. The gift came from the full sincerity of a mind that had been nowhere other than precisely here all morning, a mind that had not stepped outside its own absorption long enough to evaluate whether what the project produced was adequate for offering to someone who deserved better. The city's best was in his hands. He offered the city's best. The Buddha received the leaf. He received it in the specific manner the texts preserve with care, with the complete quality of acceptance that does not calibrate itself to the visible dimensions of what is being received, that does not make the small adjustment in ceremony that most giving occasions provoke in the receiver when what arrives is less than what the occasion might seem to require. He held it, turned to Ananda beside him, and spoke an instruction that made the encounter permanent in a way the child did not yet know it had become. "Keep this," he said. "When we return to the monastery, mix this with water and use it to plaster the wall of my room." Ananda received the leaf and carried it forward. The children watched the group continue down the road. The boy remained at the road's edge until the last of the group had passed the bend, then returned to the granary and continued its 3rd wall. He had offered what was asked of him to offer, which was everything the morning had produced, and the offering was complete, and the afternoon had its own requirements. He returned to the granary in the easy manner of someone who has done what the moment required and is ready for what the next moment requires, carrying no weight of the exchange forward, because a mind fully absorbed in what it is doing does not accumulate residue from the things it does freely and completely. Once the road had carried them past the children's hearing, the Buddha spoke to Ananda about what had just occurred. He said that through this offering the boy would come into a life of great consequence, a life through which the teaching would spread through many lands that had not yet received it, taking root in the kind of ground that holds and sustains what is planted there. Then he said what makes this one of the most instructive moments in the tradition. He called this offering the most valuable he had received from any person of means who had come to him with gifts throughout his travels. More valuable than what princes had prepared across days of deliberate arrangement. More valuable than the weighted gifts of wealthy merchants who had spent the equivalent of entire seasons of commerce on the quality of their giving. more valuable than anything provided by a household whose genuine generosity was made possible without requiring the household to part with what it could not afford to lose. A handful of dirt on a leaf given by a child, more valuable than all of it. The tradition does not explain this through a formula that makes its application predictable in advance. It does not hold that small gifts outweigh large ones by some consistent spiritual measure, or that the young carry a natural advantage over the experienced by virtue of having accumulated less of the self-consciousness that experience tends to deposit. The explanation settles precisely where this entire journey has been settling. What made this offering more valuable than everything the Buddha had received that day was the quality of the mind that gave it, and nothing else. Not the material of the gift, and not its scale. The quality of the mind behind the offering is what the offering actually is, and what it will always have been. The child had not watched the group from a distance and begun preparing himself for the encounter. He had not considered what he might offer or assessed whether the materials available to him were adequate to the person approaching. He was building a wall, and then he looked up, and then he reached without the friction of an intervening deliberation into the best thing the morning had produced and held it out. His giving carried none of the residue that accompanies most giving, the interior awareness of having given, the quiet monitoring of how the giving is being received, the small retained portion of self that watches from a remove and assesses the whole transaction in terms of what the giver looks like inside it. There was no such remove. He gave from the entirety of his present attention, and the entirety was the gift. This is the Dhammapada's opening teaching in its most unguarded expression. Mind is the forerunner of all things. The child's mind was entirely where his hands were, entirely directed toward the figure on the road, entirely without measurement of its own adequacy, in the moment of giving. That quality of mind foran an act. The act carried that quality completely into the world without diminishment. The karma that expression generated was, in the tradition's direct account, the most powerful karma present on that road that day, including all the elaborate karma being made by much larger and more carefully considered gifts. The healing this story delivers is specific and arrives without conditions. You have been building cities all your life, not in the sense of imaginary architecture, but in the sense of the real and continuous work a human life requires, maintaining what needs maintenance, building what the available materials make possible, attending to the steady and largely unremarkable work that asks for your continuous presence and effort across the ordinary days. Most days are built from this ordinary texture. The elevated occasions are the exception. The daily work is where most karma is generated, not in moments sufficiently dramatic to be recognizable as significant, but in the daily texture of absorbed and honest attention given to whatever the day contained. The child was fully inside that daily texture when the road delivered something worth looking up for. He did not step back from the morning's work to prepare a different quality of presence for the offering. The absorbed attention of the granary wall and the open-handed giving at the road's edge were one continuous movement, the same quality of mind expressed first in the building and then in the giving. His karma was generated from inside ordinary life, by what ordinary life had been building in him since morning, expressed in the moment that morning's quality of mind encountered something worth giving to. Every day you have brought genuine presence to what the day required has been doing the same building in you. Every hour given to the actual contents of the actual moment, without the quiet division of a mind physically here, while being otherwise occupied, has been accumulating in the texture of what your mind is across the years. That accumulation waits beneath the surface of any morning, quietly building the quality of availability the child brought to the road, the willingness to give completely from what the morning provides, without measuring its contents against any other morning standard, without asking first whether what is in the hands is adequate to what the moment deserves. What the child gave was mud. What the tradition says the child gave was the most valuable thing offered that day. These two statements are simultaneously and completely true, and the distance between them is not a paradox requiring resolution. It is the entire teaching received whole. The quality of the mind behind the act is what the act actually is. Mud carried by a mind of complete and unself-conscious sincerity becomes the most valuable offering present. Gold carried by a mind monitoring its own generosity becomes something considerably less than gold. Your mind creates your karma, which means the quality of mind you bring to any given moment is the only accurate measure of what that moment is actually making. The karma of a completely open hand is available now to any person in any moment, regardless of what that moment contains. The child's qualification for the most valuable offering on the road that day was a morning of absorbed work and the immediate recognition of someone worth giving to. Those were sufficient. You have accumulated more mornings than he had. Every morning you showed up for, every day of ordinary work given, without requiring it to be more than it was, has been adding to the ground those mornings have been building in you, preparing for exactly this quality of availability, the willingness to give from what the morning provides, without asking whether what the morning provided was the right kind of gift. Your mind is creating your karma now with the quality of presence you are bringing to what is directly in front of you. The child did not arrange his attention in advance of the encounter or manufacture the openness the giving required. He was absorbed in the work, and then he looked up, and then he gave from what the work had put in his hands. The sequence was seamless. The absorbed attention of the granary wall and the open attention of the road were the same quality of mind, continuous and undivided, moving from one task to the next without any gap of self-assessment between them. That quality of continuity, the mind genuinely present to what each moment contains, without drawing back to evaluate whether the moment is worth the quality of presence it is receiving, is what the tradition identifies as the ground from which the most powerful karma grows. The child lived inside it without knowing it as anything other than an ordinary morning. That is all the tradition required of him. That is all the tradition has ever required. The first wife the dying man had neglected was never somewhere else waiting for him to remember her. She was in every moment of genuine presence he brought to whatever the day contained. She was in the granary wall's third attempt. She was in the branch, held steady while the ants crossed. She was in the lamp burning through the night, because the hand that lit it held nothing back. She was in the moment just before the pillow. She has been in every moment of this listening, in whatever quality of genuine attention you brought to each story as it arrived. She is the accumulation of every ordinary day you were present for, every genuine act of care given without calculation, every moment of honest attention brought to whatever the road put in front of you. She is what follows, because she has never been following. She has always been what you are, built one morning at a time from the quality of mind you brought to the work, across all the ordinary days and all the roads they traveled. And she will be present at the end of every road you travel, because she has been present at every point along the way, in the dirt and the leaf and the both hands full offering of whatever this particular morning has put in your hands. Mind is the forerunner of all actions. If one acts with a serene mind, happiness follows as a shadow that never departs. You heard these words at the beginning of this journey. They land differently now, not because the words have changed, because you have traveled somewhere since you first received them. And what you carried through 9 stories has done what stories do when they are genuinely received. Something has shifted, quietly and without announcement, in the interior of the person who gave them real attention. The dying man's first wife was always present. The stream was always clearing. The lamp was still burning at dawn. The child's hands were already full. These were never stories about other people in distant times. They were always yours. The tradition simply held them in a form that makes their nature visible. Your mind has been creating your karma throughout this listening, in every moment of genuine attention. Every place where something landed and you let it land, every breath taken in the longer silences. That quality of attention is the first wife. She is here now. She will be present in whatever tomorrow puts in your hands. Wherever you are tonight, in this community of people listening across so many different places and different darknesses, rest well. The mind that listened has already received what it came for.